What's your mission here, my friend? Talk to me before
I just want to talk to you. Calm down, please.
don't want to talk to me. How?
I want to ask questions.
Questions?
Okay? Yes,
As in...
just few questions, okay?
Oh, okay, come.
Brutal, relentless, and merciless. These words capture the essence of the dangerous pirates prowling the coastal waters of Central Africa. These are young Somalis and Nigerians who venture into the sea, armed with outdated pistols and rifles, yet driven by a deep hunger for glory. They know no mercy, for they themselves have never experienced compassion firsthand. Precariousness and displacement have shaped these youths, scarred deeply both physically and emotionally. Driven to the sea by a land that denies them a dignified life, adolescents from Nigeria and Somalia are recruited by criminal organizations that exploit them for their own gain. In societies where only absence is present, even a look of respect can be a sufficient reward. Somali pirates risk their lives to hijack ships, cargo, or sailors, and most who return do not reap the rewards of their efforts. While the leaders and bosses keep much of the spoils, the younger ones are still willing to embrace this lifestyle as the psychological reward is significant. These adolescents become pirates to give their lives meaning and gain the admiration, or better yet, the fear of everyone in the village. The goal is to survive another day, but the dream is to last long enough to replace their leaders and forge their own empire of blood and fire.
Mama area be this yo. 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 Mama area be this yo.
This is my land. If you come for me, I will destroy you. This is the war chant of Nigerian pirates, men who have made violence their way of life. Raised in a world that offers few opportunities for personal growth, the palms of their hands have become accustomed to the cold metal of their weapons from an early age. In many coastal villages in Nigeria or Somalia, the most modern artifacts you will find are the AK-47s, wielded by criminals, and some satellite phones used by warlords to negotiate ransoms. Even in this climate of precariousness, the piracy business generates millions of dollars, leading to an exponential increase in activity along the African coasts. To understand the causes of this massive criminal phenomenon in depth, we need to consider three key factors: the vulnerability of the trade routes surrounding Africa, the economic exploitation in these nations, and the precarious lifestyle of their inhabitants. The combination of these three elements has created an explosive cocktail that threatens international trade in the Southern Hemisphere's waters and seems far from over. Initially, it is important to understand the social and cultural situation in Nigeria and Somalia. Nigeria, in West Africa, is one of the largest countries in what is known as the Gulf of Guinea. While Nigeria has been experiencing slow state growth for a decade and is by no means a failed state, its military forces still struggle to combat organized crime. Other countries in the region show more problematic economies, leading to the creation of militias and armies that answer to criminal warlords. Although Nigerians attempt to fight militarized mafias, the country's vast economic disparity, which results in extreme poverty far from a smaller middle class that resides in major cities, facilitates the recruitment of aspiring criminals. At the same time, the proliferation of these pirate mafias is directly related to the fact that ships carrying oil and gas traverse the waters of the Gulf of Guinea. Capturing an oil tanker can mean a huge reward, and if you don't believe me, just listen to how much this pirate wants to charge.
Last year, how many attacks did you do?
Of course, last year, I struck no less than 15 attacks because we were not pleased.
And sometimes do you hijack the ship to get money?
Yes, sometimes because we have nowhere to start from. Sometimes we hijack the ships to get money.
Usually, how much is it to release a ship?
Depends on the ship. We can even say 200 million, bring 900 million for.
And when you keep the member of the crews, You keep them on the ship, on the boat, or you...
So I've tried for you.
The ransom for a medium-sized vessel is around 200 million naira, which is equivalent to about $200,000. In reality, this amount does not represent a significant sum for rescuing an oil tanker or a fuel-carrying ship. Beyond the life of the captain and crew, which are invaluable, a ship in the industry could be worth billions of dollars. Of course, the man is the land he walks on, and in such an unequal society, this scheme is mirrored in the mafias. Not all pirates receive a significant share of the loot. In fact, most of what we might call the foot soldiers risk their lives mainly for fame and a handful of cash, while it is the major warlords who take the gold. In the most cruel cases, returning home with a scar and a story to tell is all the payment they receive for their work. Despite this, ship hijacking is a crime that grows year by year, reaching a peak of 130 vessels captured in 2020. Currently, the Gulf of Guinea is marked as the most dangerous place for commercial ships, and the European Union as well as the United States are considering intervening in the issue. A similar situation occurs in Somalia, on the opposite end of the African continent. But unlike Nigeria, this country faces severe infrastructural problems, and its state can hardly be considered stable. In fact, Somalia is a failed state, one of the poorest in the world, and it is experiencing a severe food crisis that affects much of its population. As if that weren't enough, it has been in a constant state of internal armed conflict for almost 20 years. This civil war between rival clans, which also involves Islamic fundamentalists and remnants of the government overthrown in 2001, makes any kind of social organization to combat crime impossible. In Somalia, piracy is deeply linked to the various warlords who dominate the country. If by chance you entered any village there, the first thing you would see would be a cannon pointed at your face.
Get down. Quick, get down.
Okay.
Get down. Yeah, down. Down. Before I blow your head off.
Okay.
It is highly likely that if you ventured deep into a pirate village, you would not return alive. The truth is that in Somalia, criminal organizations do not have to work hard to recruit their soldiers. For the past few years, every Somali child's dream has been to become a pirate. With extreme poverty being prevalent, the criminal underworld offers them prestige in addition to a meal. While children in the Western world imagine themselves as astronauts or scoring the goal that will make their country win a World Cup, the greatest fantasy of Somali youth is to hijack a ship at gunpoint. This also has an even more dangerous consequence, as young pirates throw themselves into the waters ready to lose everything, while their Nigerian counterparts try to be a bit more professional. Somali pirates are not afraid to be extremely violent, amputating or mutilating their victims to prove that their demands are real. The humanitarian nightmare ravaging the country has seared these young men's sensitivity, making them capable of carrying out the most brutal acts with just a single order. At times, they prefer to return with the heads of their victims, knowing that if they come back empty-handed, they will only receive their own decapitation as a reward. The piracy rampant in the Gulf of Guinea is due to unemployment among young people and adults, mainly caused by illegal fishing, which devastates the region and creates a severe lack of job opportunities. This allows for a certain economic ascendancy among criminals, who are structured in organizations similar to Mexican cartels. In the case of Somalia, anarchy is total, and pirates can be recruited in coastal villages on the same day the job is executed. This turns teenagers into cannon fodder, a sort of human shields used to protect more experienced criminals. This also brings several problems, as Somali attempts at hijacking are highly inefficient. They travel in very precarious boats, made of plastic or even inflatable like lifeboats, which makes it very difficult to approach large ships, resulting in a very low success rate for hijackings. However, when the Somali pirates manage to board a vessel, they unleash brutal violence that in some cases can compromise the entire operation. Some pirates, completely immersed in adrenaline and psychoactive substances, have even killed their victims, causing the ransom negotiations to fail. Yet, despite all the suffering involved in this criminal activity, Somalis consider that what awaits them on land is even worse.
Okay, what do you do with this money?
The money I used to buy ammunition and speedboats and the rest to take care of our families. Because we don't have job, that is why we are doing this dirty job. You come to exploit here and you don't want to employ we. That is why, that is the major reason why we are doing this. You don't want to employ us, and you are exploiting from us.
You have children?
I have 5 children. 2 are in the university, and I don't have a job.
The search for a dignified life through undignified acts, as the pirate himself acknowledges. Hunger, civil war, and bombings by other countries fighting Islamic fundamentalism have sealed the fate of young people in East Africa, who cast their only hope like a bottle into a sea of blood. On the other side of the continent, in West Africa, as we mentioned, the situation is different but no less horrific. One problem that has grown in the Gulf of Guinea is natural disasters caused by human intervention, which affect the countries in the region, especially in the fishing industry. Some failed hijacking attempts result in oil spills, which destroy the natural resources of coastal towns and cities. Recent studies indicate that the impact over the past decades has been 250,000 barrels of oil spilled in the Niger Delta, equivalent to 40 million liters of black oil contaminating everything it touches. This only considers the human and ecological valuation. The economic impact is also negative, creating a vicious cycle in a region where honest work is scarce, pushing more people towards criminality. At the same time, energy industries in Europe and Asia have indicated that if the situation in the Gulf of Guinea is not reversed, it could lead to an international energy crisis. This is also because American or European-flagged ships are the primary targets of pirates. Due to the strategic value of energy to those countries, the trend is that they pay much more for ransoms. According to the criminals themselves, they seek to avoid capturing vessels from developing countries like India or Thailand.
Target specific nationalities?
Yes, like those Indians, we don't go for Indians because they are very cheap people. Like the Filipinos, no, very cheap. We target people like you. I know if I kidnap you, I will get much money for myself.
How much do you think you could get if you would kidnap me?
From you? At least 50 million naira.
Which are the most bankable hostages you target?
Americans and French.
Of course, neither the French nor the Americans are happy to know that when they sail through these regions, they have a target on their heads. It is very difficult to defend a large vessel, whether it is carrying merchandise or oil. The crew is rarely large or has weapons that allow them to defend themselves. Something that is becoming fashionable among merchant ships is barbed wire, large, high-powered hoses, and other elements with which they try to prevent pirates from boarding the ship. In the case of large companies, it is not unusual for them to install a safe on the ships with a quantity of money that the captains can use to negotiate the lives of their crew with the criminals. However, pirates have already become accustomed to this last strategy, so they try to steal that money, in addition to capturing the ship.
Part of my job.
So once you have opened the fire, you go on board?
I seize fire and I climb.
You climb?
Yes. Go straight to the engine room and the captain.
The captain?
I will ask the captain to come down. How much do you have on board?
Oh.
I have 1 million. I have 3 million. Okay, give me. If you don't want to release the money, sorry for you. You go to hell. Blow off your head.
The pirates' statements reveal that life and death are beyond any crew's ability to negotiate. Dealing with this type of attack is a central issue in 21st century maritime trade, and it would not be surprising if major Western powers decided to take action. For now, some European Union countries have begun gathering information on the modus operandi of Nigerian pirates, likely to develop an intervention strategy to reduce activity in the region. It is still unclear whether this would involve European naval forces or support for African military structures patrolling the Gulf of Guinea. On the other hand, the situation in Somalia is much more complex, as the trade routes affected by piracy involve many nations, including the United States, Russia, China, and India, among others. It is understandable that, in this scenario, coordinating to stop the activity would be diplomatically impossible. This is not only because it is hard to imagine an agreement between powers that are currently politically and economically opposed, but also because Somalia's deep humanitarian crisis makes attacks erratic and precarious. Therefore, a direct military response by a developed country might be seen as an overreach. In any case, the world is watching closely what happens on the shores of Africa. It is unclear what path to take to address a problem that, at its core, stems from profound inequality and neglect. Perhaps fighting fire with fire is not the best option, and there may be a possibility of bringing a bit of hope to a land besieged by war. A future where children hear pirate stories only to fall asleep, not to live them. Jessica Buchanan wasn't sure what she had heard in the dark night of the Somali desert. The sound, barely perceptible amidst the foliage, blended with the echo of her own struggle against a urinary infection threatening to spread to her kidneys, plunging her into fever and vomiting. After 93 days in the hands of Somali land pirates, her access to food, water, and medicine was severely limited, and the shadow of death seemed to draw nearer. Amidst this uncertainty, a kidnapper, alerted by the same sound, woke the other pirates to the presence of intruders. The unexpected outbreak of gunfire marked the beginning of a new threat for Buchanan and her fellow captive, Pole Hagen-Thisted. Exhausted from months of malnutrition and illness, she clung to a blanket, wishing to disappear into the darkness of the desert. At that critical moment, a pair of hands reached out to her, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. "Jessica, you're okay," echoed a faceless voice in the darkness. "I know you're scared, but you'll be okay. We're the U.S. Army, and now you're safe. We'll take you home." In today's video, we'll tell you about the incredible and brave rescue operation carried out by the Navy SEALs, which saved Jessica Buchanan and her colleague in the dangerous territory of Somalia. Jessica Buchanan, a 32-year-old American citizen, played a vital role as an educator in Somalia, where she worked for a prominent humanitarian organization. Her work focused on raising awareness among children about the dangers of landmines. These dangerous weapons function as small bombs planted in rural territories and pose a constant threat to civilians throughout the country. In an environment marked by insecurity and tribal conflicts, Jessica refused to confine herself to the safety of walls and chose to confront challenges directly in the field. She decided to carry out her mine awareness mission near the Green Line, a division separating areas controlled by Islamist groups from other areas governed by democratic governments. This border represented the security limit, and Jessica was determined to challenge it to fulfill her humanitarian mission in the most vulnerable populations. The night before her trip to Islamic territory, in October 2011, she sent a text message to her husband, Eric Landemalm, who also worked in humanitarian efforts in Somalia. Given the potential danger she faced in this mined area, Jessica asked her husband a question. "If I'm kidnapped on this trip, will you come to rescue me?" In the midst of the dark Somali desert, the land cruiser advanced along the dusty road with Jessica on board alongside her colleague, Pole Hagen-Thisted. Although nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first, tension was palpable in the air due to the lack of movement in the area. However, that normalcy was disrupted when they heard movement in the front seats. An unknown driver took over the wheel, replacing Jessica's usual driver. Before they could understand what was happening, the convoy was ambushed by a group of armed men who seemed to emerge out of nowhere. The outbreak of violence caused the vehicle to stop abruptly, with the mercenaries taking control within seconds. As chaos engulfed the place, Jessica found herself face to face with the threat of land pirates. The man tasked with protecting them had betrayed them and handed them over to the Somali kidnappers, who demanded a ransom of up to $45 million. Buchanan and Thisted were taken hostage. After hours of traveling with guns pointed at their heads, the two aid workers were forced to walk through the night to a compound in rural Galmudug, about 90 miles inland from the Somali coast. This is how Jessica described her deep fear of being raped.
And I think, okay, this is it. Like, I'm bracing myself to be shot in the back of the head. And I think that there's mercy in the fact that maybe they're not going to rape me first, but that it's just going to be quick.
The first few days after the kidnapping were even more harrowing for Jessica Buchanan. The night hours stretched on endlessly, shrouded in the cold of the night and often soaked by the seasonal rains. Her diet was meager, limited to small portions of tuna and a piece of bread each day. Beyond the terrible fears that the kidnapping entailed, Buchanan feared for her previous health condition, as she suffered from a thyroid condition and was battling a kidney infection. Her captors did not provide her with the necessary medications. For more than 3 long months, Buchanan and her co-worker were forced to sleep on mats in the open desert, subjected to extreme conditions and without access to adequate medical care. It was a test of physical and emotional endurance that wore down their strength and hopes of being rescued. This is how Jessica testified. "Yeah, I mean, they treated us like animals, being so sick that you're throwing up behind bushes, and you can't walk straight and you're lying in a fetal position on the ground under a tree, and they don't even care. Their duty was to keep me from dying because then I was worthless." The Somali kidnappers initially demanded $45 million as a ransom for the release of Jessica Buchanan and her partner. In addition to the ransom, they also sought the release of Somali prisoners held in the United States. The government of the African country condemned the act and pledged to cooperate with the rescue efforts. However, the Somali authorities were not willing to give in to the pirates' demands and emphasized their position against paying ransoms, as this could encourage future kidnappings. Despite this stance, the situation remained delicate, with negotiations ongoing and uncertainty over the fate of the hostages. Finally, on January 25, 2012, a daring rescue operation led by President Obama was unleashed, involving the Navy's Team 6. This elite team, best known for their role in taking out Osama bin Laden, faced unprecedented challenges from the start of the mission. Aware of the urgency of the rescue, the SEAL operators prepared for a high-risk mission deep into Somali territory. However, fate had other plans. Hurricane-force winds and an unexpected solar storm threatened to disrupt the operation and hamper calls with support units. Despite these adversities, the SEALs remained steadfast in their determination to carry out the rescue. With precision and bravery, they charged into the unknown darkness, facing one of the most dangerous and challenging hostage rescues in history. The rescue is explained in more detail in the animation below.
The mission, named Octave Fusion, called for Navy SEAL Team 6 to parachute into central Somalia, surround a camp where the captives were being held, and take prisoners if possible. But a Pentagon official says when one of the Somali kidnappers fired, the commandos opened up. At least 8 suspects were killed and the hostages rescued.
Every aspect of the operation was meticulously planned and executed. The parachute drop and stealthy advance towards the pirate camp were carried out with precision. According to an anonymous witness quoted by IFA, the world's leading Spanish-language news agency, several helicopters dropped bombs and anesthetic gas to neutralize the pirates. This was followed by an armed confrontation that resulted in the death of at least 8 hijackers and the arrest of 7 more. Diri al-Idis, a spiritual leader of a mosque and a witness to the operation, described how the helicopters began the attack while the pirates were sleeping in their camp. The successful rescue culminated in the release of the captives and the elimination of the threat from the hijackers. Jessica Buchanan testified, and then I hear my name. But it's not a Somali accent, it's an American accent, and I can't understand. I can't understand that someone with an American accent knows my name, and they say, "Jessica, we're from the American military. We're here to bring you home and you're safe."
So your folks will see
There
how
you
you're
go.
doing? They're going to be
You're
so
doing
glad
great,
to see
Jessica.
you.
You're doing wonderful, okay?
Welcome back.
Just like I told you, okay? We're on a plane now, and we're going to go to Kuwait, okay? It's about an hour and 15-minute flight time, okay? All these...
Recounting the first moments of her release, Jessica recalls, "I just started crying. At that point in my life, I had never been so proud and so happy to be an American." After storming the pirate compound and freeing the hostages, American forces returned to their base at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. The president of Galmudug, a state within Somalia, thanked the United States for carrying out the rescue. Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama congratulated his Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, before his State of the Union address in 2012. Obama was already aware of Jessica's release, and yet during his speech, he did not mention any details about the raid on the Somali pirates in order to avoid retaliation and ensure the safety of the freed hostages until they were in a safe area. When the rescue was made public, the American president praised the courage and professionalism of the troops who carried out the operation, assuring that the United States would not tolerate kidnappings and would do everything possible to protect its citizens. The operation was a test of the country's determination to confront threats to the security of its citizens wherever they may be. The decision to order the rescue was based on Jessica Buchanan's deteriorating health and the assessment that it was the right time to act. Months later, the president personally decorated the SEAL team that carried out the daring rescue. In a private ceremony at the White House, he thanked the elite group for their dedication and teamwork in protecting American citizens around the world. For her part, Jessica gave her first interview about the kidnapping on the program 60 Minutes in May 2013. Among her first thoughts when she was kidnapped were the fear of dying without having had children and without saying goodbye to her loved ones. However, life gave her a break, and together with her husband, they returned to the United States and now have a son and a daughter.
And we had a second chance. And then later, we flew to Portland, Oregon, and I was reunited with my father and my brother and my sister and her husband.
We thank you for joining us in this shocking story, and we invite you to subscribe to our channel to continue discovering stories of bravery and heroism. Until the next adventure.